Hi, I'm Bob Powell, and I'm here talking to Marcia Mantell of Mantell Retirement Consulting. Marcia and I have played a key role in shaping parts of the retirement management advisor curriculum, and we're here to chat with you about some of the aspects of the curriculum that we have worked on and that would be of special interest to those who are thinking about enrolling in the retirement management advisor curriculum program. Marcia, welcome.
Hi, Bob. Great to be together again.
It's so great to be together, even though we're only joined by electronics, I guess, right?
Indeed.
So, Marcia, I wanted to talk to you about Social Security and its role in the RMA curriculum. A key part of the RMA is helping FAs get a better understanding of Social Security. There are lots of opinions out there, but we wanted to focus on the facts and how Social Security was designed and how it is a social insurance arrangement. So you and I, we wrote the section of the RMA curriculum. Can you give us an overview of what the RMA candidates will find in the Social Security section?
Oh, sure. I think you're exactly right. And right from the get-go, in this section that we wrote, it is about giving all the RMAs a really good foundation about how Social Security really works, not how you think it works. And we walk you through things like how to read the trust fund report, the different accounts that are or sub-accounts within the trust fund. And we really do arm the RMAs with the reasons and rationale for why and how Social Security is not going bankrupt. And it's to help when you have these conversations with clients, so many of them have, let's call them very specific opinions about Social Security, but that drives decisions. And the decision you make about Social Security, when to claim and how you're going to go about it, it is so critical to the entire rest of your portfolio that this is really the starting point. We start with Social Security here. We incorporate it into the household balance sheet, into the cash flow, and we take a look at how it's going to affect the flooring and what your options are for your building a floor. So all of that comes together right out of the gate.
So let me just go back to some of the basics that we talk about, right? There's so many different terms that people have to become acquainted with. If you're an FA, you should really become acquainted with terms like primary insurance amount, right? And perhaps the difference between a spousal benefit and a survivor's benefit, right? All the terms that you perhaps maybe aren't familiar with, but need to be, given that your clients are either on the precipice of claiming Social Security or within years of claiming it.
Yeah, it is definitely a different language. And there are many technical terms. And, it's like everything else we do in retirement land, right? Things that you think words that you do know, they mean something else in retirement. And then you introduce a whole new language with Social Security. Amy might be my favorite, the average index monthly earnings. So we do walk RMAs through those technical details. But what I find so, fascinating for how we approached Social Security, it isn't just a recapture of what you can already find on SSA.gov. We really try to incorporate the thinking, the math, where it fits into clients' overall plans and how you go about thinking about this incredibly important benefit. And I'll tell you, even wealthy clients, sometimes people will say, well, no, I work with wealthy clients. They don't care about Social Security. I would argue the opposite. They often care a whole lot more. They didn't get wealthy by making financial mistakes. So this becomes a really important piece to, they've paid in for 35, 40, 45 years. They really do want to make good decisions, bringing this benefit back out and into their own pockets. So it's important all the way around.
So I do want to talk about Social Security and its role in the fundedness calculation inside the household balance sheet. But before we do that, I think the step before that is to talk about some of the claiming strategies, because that actually affects the fundedness inside the household balance sheet, depending on when you might claim, et cetera.
Yeah, and I talk about them in terms of the four categories that Social Security will use for each of us. You'll either be an individual filer, you'll be a married person, a spouse, an ex-spouse, or a widow or widower, a surviving spouse. So those are the four categories that Social Security will look at each of us when determining our benefit. Now, what's interesting is we'll give you the calculations for how each of these is approached, and that's all included in the curriculum. But then we go a step further and try to help tie pieces together. So for Bob and for me, we're both married, but we also have our own work records. So what should we do? Do I claim on Dan? Do I have my own benefit? Can I stepwise it and pick and choose? The answer is no. There are all these different points of connection that make it more challenging. And each of your clients will go through that sequence, right? If they're divorced, do they meet the rules? When they become a widow or widower, the game is very different. If you're a young widow, if you're already claiming, or if you're not already claiming. So all of these real life situations, we tried to help bring to life in this curriculum.
And we bring them to life in a way that I think is relative in terms of learning, which is through case studies, through the stories.
Yeah, we did. And it was a little second thought there for a while. We've got some good practice management built into the reading, but then we went a step further. You're right, Bob, and did these 4 case studies based on those 4 claiming strategies. Because it's very different, when you're a learner and he's like, okay, I've got the concept. I get this. I get what she's saying about being a spouse or being a widow. And then you're sitting in front of a client. So we really wanted to bridge that gap so you could see a variety of scenarios that will play out across the table from you when you're meeting with individual clients and over time, because how you start your claim, I would start as a married person. Eventually I may become a widow, and that might be 20 years down the road, and you need to be able to help me there too. So yeah, we did. I like the case studies. I think they bring to life what really happens with an advisor and his clients.
Yeah, I do want to talk about the capstone, but before I talk about that, I want to make mention of how I think part of the secret sauce of the RMA is something called the household balance sheet, where among other things, you're calculating the present value of a stream of income, as well as your liabilities or expenses in retirement. And one of the calculations is, what is the present value of my Social Security benefits? And then I layer that into my balance sheet as an asset in terms of me trying to calculate my fundedness. I'm calculating the present value of not only my Social Security, but my income stream from financial capital and my income stream from human capital to determine what's the present value of my retirement assets. And then also what's the present value of my expenses in retirement or liabilities, to come up with a level of fundedness. And it's critical. It's a foundational, I think, exercise to determine what's the value of your Social Security benefit. And obviously, that's a number that's determined, I think, in large part by when you claim and whether, if you're in a household, whether you and your spouse are receiving benefits. So it's really important to understand the claiming strategy in order to calculate the actual present value of that Social Security benefit.
It really is. And it's something that we've not seen in any other programs or any other approaches to Social Security. It's not, it's not an investment. It is more like insurance, but it's got a real valuation to it. And so putting that into the equation, it can dramatically change legacy goals, is one of the ways I think about it. If you don't get this Social Security thing right, you can't bequeath your Social Security to your darling children. It ends when you're done, your last day. But if you've done it right, you may have preserved some of your own assets, your investable assets, so that you can leave a legacy to your family. And so it is tying these pieces together. Retirement is not a straight line. There are lots of disparate parts that all have to tie together under that more comprehensive retirement income plan that is part of the whole RMA curriculum.
Yeah. And oftentimes people frame it as trying to optimize one's Social Security benefit. And I think about, in terms of the RMA, for me anyway, a critical component is doing what if scenarios. And you can really see a dramatic difference if you claim at 62 versus, say, 65 versus 70 in terms of the value of that benefit. Throw in spousal benefits, et cetera. It becomes, an interesting calculation to make to see how your claiming strategy affects the present value of your benefit.
Yeah, and we would say it's $1 million decision for a lot of people. I mean, this is not a small thing. It looks small because your monthly benefit, oh, it's only $2,500 a month or $3,500 a month. No, when you put it into the big equation, these are $1 million decisions you're helping clients make.
Right.
That's a big deal.
And I also look at it too, in the curriculum, we have a calculation called C over FC and C prime over FC, where we're looking at how much do you need to draw from your financial capital in order to sustain your desired standard of living.
Yes.
Well, the lower that number, the better, and the higher the number from Social Security, the better. And so the degree to which you can reduce the draw on your financial capital, the better in terms of fundedness.
Yeah. And it does all tie together. And, we do in the RMA curriculum, we look at that household balance sheet as a key piece of a tool to use with clients for their decision making. And we also look at the cash flow, because at the end of the day too, you've got to weigh how much of your personal assets are you going to be willing to draw down to create your lifestyle and pay for your lifestyle in retirement versus when you want to draw down Social Security or start Social Security. Yeah. So yeah, there are many pieces to put together.
So speaking of pieces, we cover Social Security inside the RMA curriculum book, but we also talk about it inside the capstone, which is another requirement of receiving or earning the RMA certification.
Yeah, I think it's fun. You can read a book, sure, but it's more fun when you get to talk to your colleagues, talk to the other students who are working on the RMA and hear from, Bob does a session at the capstone, I do a session at the capstone, and we start to bring these pieces to life, in a presentation format. And you have a lot of opportunities to ask questions, not only during the capstone, but, and throughout the event, but then you've got us as resources as well. When client questions come up and it's like, I don't know, let me check with my pals from the IWI and the other RMAs. So it does give you a good network. And I'd also say, Bob, the couple of other things we do, we present at other conferences within the IWI. I did one presentation about the integration of Social Security and Medicare. It's super important to get your arms around these different major, massive government programs for retirees and how they connect and where your clients are going to make mistakes, because they make a ton of them. So it's great if you can help them navigate the two systems. And then we also write articles in the IWI Monitor. You run the Retirement Management Journal. So you're going to get a lot more Social Security updates, positioning points. I wrote one article about how Social Security helps women in particular mitigate some of the risks that are unique to women, not the least of which is longevity. So there's a lot of opportunity to not only get your foundation with the curriculum and the capstone, but then really stay current and on top of what's going on as things change in the world.
Yeah, I always look at retirement as a fascinating subject, because I seem to think, from my point of view, every day, new laws, new products, new research, contrary points of view, conflicting advice, contradictory advice, complicated advice. And so to stay abreast of this topic is really to become a student of the subject. And the RMA, I think, is a good building block, because among other things, it's not necessarily saying, here are the topics you need to know. It's more about, here's the process and the step-by-step process that you need to know to build a retirement income plan for your clients in ways that other certification programs perhaps don't do.
It is the process. I would totally agree with you. And that all the underpinnings underneath the process move and shift, exactly what you said. And yet you've got clients that you need to serve. And to be able to sit across the desk and explain something that's going on, or a fear that they might have, when that paycheck stops, you have jumped off a cliff, and there's a lot of reassurance needed through the journey. Then there could be health issues. Then you have to decide about what to do with your house. All of these major life events, emotional life events, come into play. And we're not always so comfortable with the whole aging process idea. So the more you know, the more you can get from a body of knowledge that starts with the RMA, but then continues through the Investments and Wealth Institute. I just don't know anywhere else in our industry. I've been in the industry for 30 years. Bob, you're about the same. There's nothing else like it.
I may look old, but I'm younger than you think.
30 years, that's not bad. Come on.
That's fair. Anything that we haven't touched on that you would like to bring up, or anything that you've already mentioned that you want to reemphasize?
I don't think so. I mean, it's just terrific that I would say Bob and I were both in the first cohort of the RMAs. We each hold our RMA designation, and it was not nearly as thorough, because it was new. And today, I think the level of information and the ongoing updates you're going to get are worth every single client you're going to face.